California Attorney General Rob Bonta back with us this morning to discuss some high-profile legal matters concerning our state.
All right, Mr. Attorney General, thanks for coming back. I'm glad we didn't scare you away on the last visit.
Did not. Very welcoming.
Last month, you did join us and you warned people against price gouging and taking advantage of fire victims. Your office has charged at least one local realtor accused of raising the price of a rental home significantly for a displaced family. Can you tell us where that case stands right now and what else are you doing along those lines?
Absolutely. When we talked last time, I sent a clear warning that we're looking. We are monitoring potential price gouging. We're getting lots of reports of potential price gouging, and we will prosecute as necessary. We have kept our promise. We brought 3 separate cases for price gouging, each time a realtor or a landlord or some combination of both raising prices above the 10% cap that kicks in the time of a disaster, an emergency like now. And it's so important that we wrap our arms around our victims and support them, help them rebuild and heal, and ensure that they're not exploited and victimized again, like the price gougers are doing to them. These are crimes. We believe that we have very strong cases in court, and so we conducted our investigations, completed them, and brought charges. They have up to punishments of up to 12 months a year in jail or $10,000 penalty per instance of price gouging, and we have one of our first hearings in March next month. So the cases are moving along. We've charged them, we've brought them, we've announced them. We also have a 4th case that we worked on with the LA City Attorney where we did the investigation, and she is taking on the charging responsibilities, and it's important that we team up and collaborate at times as well. So people should not be price gouging. When and if they do, we will hold them accountable as we have here.
I want to talk to you about immigration this morning. President Trump has taken executive action to deport undocumented immigrants who are accused of or convicted of crimes. As the state's top prosecutor, where do you stand on that initiative? And then the second part of that question, what do you say to undocumented immigrants who are just here, try to earn a living, raise their families, and also those concerned about birthright citizenship? Because I think many Americans look at those two things as separate issues.
Yeah, you know, the unfortunate thing is the president's rhetoric has not matched his action. He said that he would be focused on deporting folks who are serious criminals, convicted of serious crimes. And then on day one, what did he do? He issued an executive order that went after children and U.S. citizens, people who have a constitutional right to birthright citizenship. People who haven't been born yet, certainly not criminals, that's who he has gone after. He has gone after sensitive sites like schools and hospitals and churches for immigration enforcement, where the faithful pray and children learn and patients heal. He's also gone after fully legal programs where folks fleeing persecution and violence from other countries come here seeking asylum and refuge. So his rhetoric has not matched his actions. When it comes to going after those who have been committed of serious crimes, the law here in California, in many cases, allows for local law enforcement to operate and work with immigration enforcement. So there are some activities that lawfully can certainly be done in that space of designated criminal convictions for particular crimes. It's important that we go after people who commit crime regardless of their immigration status. Anyone who commits a crime should be held accountable. And we want to use our resources in California to focus on crime, not civil immigration enforcement. We want to take on homicides and rapes and murders and assaults and aggravated assaults. The list goes on. Organized retail crime, hate crimes, human trafficking, fentanyl. That's where we want to put our resources. There's a whole agency and department that does immigration enforcement. It's called ICE, and that's what they do. They may do their job lawfully. They cannot conscript, commandeer, force, require the law enforcement agencies of the state of California to do their job for them. And it is exactly the people you mentioned that I'm concerned about, been thinking about for months, who I've been sharing information about their rights, their protections under California law, hardworking immigrants who have come here to build a new life, seeking opportunity, and paying their taxes, contributing to our state and our communities in untold numbers of ways. those are folks who I think about when we make sure that we have the right laws in place and the right protections.
Your office has joined with attorneys general from various states to sue the Trump administration on various topics, among them Doge and the actions of Elon Musk. Some Americans say, look, Elon Musk is doing what we want him to do. We want the federal budget to be slashed. We want fat to be cut. And you're using taxpayer dollars to sue the duly elected Trump administration. To that you say what?
To that I say this, we had the most calls and emails of concern and anxiety and worry from Californians from up and down the state, all parts of the state, telling us that they were deeply worried and wanted us to take action with regard to Elon Musk's access to the Treasury payment system, where they had access to people's private information, their social security numbers, their bank accounts. Elon Musk has not received one vote by any American. And just because he is the richest man in the world and started a bunch of companies doesn't mean he can meddle around in the private information of Americans unlawfully. I want government to be efficient. I want fat to be trimmed. I want us to be able to deliver a great return on investment for taxpayer dollars. Taxpayers deserve that. There's a way to do that. There's a lawful way to do that. We always followed the rule of law in America, in California, and the rule of law is being violated left and right by the president and by Elon Musk. That's why we brought a case to block Elon Musk and his army and team to block them from accessing improperly information that they shouldn't have access to, and a court agreed with us right away and has blocked him. So there's a way to do the things that you say and I say Americans and Californians want done. It's not the way it's being done by Doge and by Elon Musk.
Yesterday, you called on the FDA to address the issue of counterfeit weight loss drugs that are being sold online. We know the popularity of drugs like Ozempic and Mounjaro. But to these counterfeit drugs that are being sold online, could you please give a little more detail as to the concern you have in regard to that?
Yeah, you know, of course there's a high demand and interest in Ozempic and other drugs like this. It's important that they be used with doctors' counsel and orders in consultation with the doctor, that they be tested and not be adulterated, and they be the actual drugs substantively that they're intended to be, not knockoffs or not adulterated with dangerous other components. And so we see this in a lot of spaces where there are dangerous knockoffs trying to imitate something that's very popular and in high demand. And because of that demand, people might be willing to use them and purchase them, but it puts them at risk, their health at risk, it could harm them. And so we wanted to put out a warning, as we do often, to protect the consumers of California, to make sure that they're safe and that they're healthy.
One quick political question. You're a high-profile attorney general here in California. Many people thought the next step for you would be to run for governor. You've announced you're not going to do that in 2026. Why not?
This job is so important on normal days, and on abnormal days like today, where we have a president who unfortunately is violating the Constitution and the rule of law, and I'm on the front line protecting the rule of law and the Constitution, protecting Californians and Californians' interests when billions of dollars are unlawfully stripped away by the president that we deserve and we are owed. And I can take action to make sure we get that funding in housing, in health care, in college, in early childhood education, the list goes on. My job is more important than ever now. And it's important to be in the job, to do the job, to fight for the people who've elected me. And the people of California deserve an attorney general who's fully focused, giving full energy, passion, priority to this role, to do everything that he can and my office can to fight for them and make their lives better. And that's what they're going to get.
All right. Attorney General Rob Bonta, thank you for your time this morning. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you again.